my primary research, like you mentioned at the beginning, is the developing brain and the injured developing brain. So I usually, I mean, I guess maybe 70 or 80% of my time is looking at ways to treat either babies born prematurely or babies born, they make it the full way through pregnancy, but then something happens, and for whatever reason they get reduced oxygen or blood flow to the brain, which sort of happens maybe somewhere between 0.1 and 0.5% of the time in the UK and the US. And so in the developing brain, it certainly looks like, both from some human data and lots of animal data, that if you have a lot of omega-6s in the diet, so we're particularly talking about a fat called linoleic acid, which you find in soybean oil, what we call canola in the US, what you call rapeseed oil, less so sunflower oil. Sunflower oil is usually a bit better, but maybe corn oil and some of these other sort of plant-based oils have a lot of linoleic acid in them. And when there's a lot of this present, and it's increasing in the breast milk because there's so much of it in the diet, we're eating so many fried foods and processed foods that have these seed oils in. And so it's kind of this continuous exposure that we have that maybe we didn't have historically. So, now, the amount of linoleic acid in the diet, in our body fat, because most of the fat on our bodies is fat that we ate, has increased maybe at least 2 or 3 times in the last few decades. And sort of, if you go back, if you look at hunter-gatherer populations, linoleic acid may be made up like 2% of calories, but now it's like 5, 10, 15%, depending on the population. So it's increased a lot. And it looks like linoleic acid inhibits, or, sort of prevents the normal accumulation of other fats in the brain, which we need. So DHA is one of the fats, omega-3s, sort of the quote unquote good PUFAs that we get from fish oil or seafood. DHA is incredibly important for the developing brain. And if you have a lot of linoleic acid, and there's been studies where they, babies who had formula that was based purely on like plant oils, and then they died for some other reason. If you look at their brain, there's like no DHA in there. It's just full of linoleic acid because it's sort of, they've outcompeted. And we see a lot of data from animal models, which is a lot of the work that I do. So for the developing brain, I'm concerned about this because I'm worried you're not going to get as much DHA into your brain. And then that's important both for like normal function, but also if you get some kind of injury, the amount of inflammation you get and whether you can control that inflammation depends on the PUFAs that you have available. And if you don't have enough DHA and EPA, then you can't really switch off the inflammatory process. So that is important. And I think that's also important for like the aging brain. So, if you're worried about age-related cognitive decline or dementia, DHA is also important there. It's an incredibly complex story, but it seems like sort of the oxidized products of linoleic acid, which you can measure in the blood, seems to be higher in people with Alzheimer's disease. It's probably not great for the brain. But there are some people who are just like, I want no omega-6 PUFAs in my diet whatsoever. I don't think you need to worry about that. So if you've improved the overall quality of your diet and you're eating whole real foods, then I don't think the PUFAs matter that much, as long as you may be getting some seafood, getting some omega-3s as well. But probably the biggest culprit, which is going to be these really oxidized, sort of heated, fried omega-6 PUFAs, like you've probably removed those from your diet. So basically all the downsides you've already eliminated. So then you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that sounds quite confusing for people listening all the way through that, but really, just to try and condense it down a little bit, it's all about the ratios. Initially, the ratios, you want to make sure that if you are getting linoleic acid, if you are consuming omega-6s, and you will be doing because they are everywhere. They're in animal fats, they're in nuts, seeds, so you don't think you're not consuming linoleic acid. You are. It's just obviously, like you say, they're higher in processed foods, in processed oils and things like that, but they are in animal fats. And so just think about the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. If your omega-3, your DHA and your EPA coming from predominantly seafoods, fish oils, things like that, then if you have a high ratio of omega-3, then you're not really going to worry too much about omega-6, because like you say, the DHA and the EPA are really going to help your brain, help your body function, focus more on those particular fatty acids. But also, I think it's important, again, just to say, I often tell people, look, get the 90% correct. If you can focus on whole, real foods, real things that you cook yourself, process yourself, don't rely on these big firms to process it and package it for you. Do it yourself. Go out there, get the vegetables from your garden or your allotment, get the animal produce from your local farmer, your butcher. If you're doing that and then producing it in your kitchen and nailing down 90% of your nutrition yourself, then there's no need to worry about that other little 10%, 5%, where there's a lot of arguments over, hang on a minute, you need to stop all this linolenic acid, omega-6, because it's bad for you. No, it's not. Hang on a minute, it's good for you. No, hang on a minute, this study says it's bad for you. So everybody's going to consume it, whether you like it or not, whether you're carnivore, whether you're vegan or whatever, you are going to consume linolenic acid. So just think about it not taking up the vast amount of your nutrition. Hopefully I've summarized it quite well there.
Yeah, no, it's essentially that, which is that, so for the majority of people where lots of linoleic acid may be bad for your health, and it's certainly possible, that's the majority of that is going to be coming from highly processed, deep fried, nutrient poor foods. So if you remove those, first of all, immediately the balance of omega-3 to omega-6 in your diets is going to improve. And then obviously if you're adding some seafood, that's going to do it. So basically, again, it boils down to your exact premise, which is that if you focus on nutrient dense foods, actually you don't need to worry about it, because you probably fixed the problem anyway without having to think about it.